Hi there. Welcome to the Quick 60 with Joe. My name is Joe Vasquez, and I'm an entrepreneur and investor based in San Francisco, California. The Quick 60 is a series of workshops covering topics from Microsoft spreadsheets all the way to business development and everything in between. The goal is to give you the most important skills that you need to get ahead in the workforce. We're going to keep it fun, within 60 minutes, and give you both a high-level overview and a deep dive of these most critical skills. So let's dig in. So for today, we'll be talking about, as I mentioned before, a quick introduction to myself, an overview of what is productivity. A lot of people have misconceptions around what productivity actually means. We'll be talking about productivity mindsets, the Get Things Done framework, tools and processes that I use and other people use in their everyday productivity processes. A little bit of a Q&A session, and then a final ask. At the end, instead of charging for today's workshop, I'm asking that all of you donate $10, $15, $20 to an organization that is actively promoting social justice and doing work at the front lines of racial justice. So I'll send you a quick list of recommended organizations at the end of today's presentation. If you're interested in downloading the slides, using the slides, feel free to go to bit.ly/productivewithjoe. For the folks on Instagram or Facebook, again, the link is bit.ly/productivewithjoe. So let's jump right into it. A quick about me for the folks that maybe don't know we haven't met in the past. I'm a venture partner at Revel Partners and an active angel investor. Revel Partners is a $50 million B2B SaaS fund based in New York with exposure in Canada, a lot of the United States, and Europe as well. I'm a founder of iLab Collective, where we focused on corporate venture advisory, internal innovation strategy, venture building. We work with Visa, CBUSA, the government of Uruguay, Santander, and others. I was an early co-founder of StartX, former director at Runway Incubator, which is based in San Francisco. I co-taught venture capital courses with the Kauffman Fellows Academy, and some other quick things. I'm proud to be Latino, I'm proud to be deaf, and I'm proud to be the first person in my family to go to college. And I say this because oftentimes we tend to hide the things that are not as brand name, but I think we have a really great opportunity to reclaim different parts of our heritage and our identity, because that's what makes us truly unique. One quick thing. So I mentioned that I'm deaf. At the bottom of most of Google's presentations, you can see a closed caption button. I'm going to turn this on because I believe that accessibility should be at the forefront of every educational opportunity. So if you're ever using Google Slides or Google presentations, I fully encourage you to maximize and use the captions at the bottom of the screen. So let's maybe take a step back. What is productivity? Writer Charles Duhigg defines productivity as making certain choices in certain ways that moves us from being merely busy to genuinely productive in his book, Smarter, Faster, Better. It's getting the results you want with less time and effort. Tony Robbins popularized this quote. So now, how do we take this higher level concept of productivity and convert it into something meaningful, some type of process, tools, or frameworks that you could use in your everyday personal and professional life? So let's go back to this quote. Movement doesn't equate with progress. I've seen a lot of people that are busy all day. They're in meetings, they're running around, they're filling out papers, but they're not actually making movement or progress towards their goals. It requires a certain recalibration of mindsets around what your goals are and how can you measure progress towards it, which we'll talk about in a little bit in today's presentation. Another thing, self-awareness is crucial to building strong habits. Some people have certain triggers or rewards that work best for themselves. I know myself particularly well, and I'm constantly striving to learn and reflect about what works best for me. So everything that I have in this presentation might not work for you. It works for me. So you really need to take the time to understand what works for you and build these processes and frameworks around yourself. Some things to consider, like setting up cues in your environment that trigger a healthy habit, breaking down barriers to desired action, and finally, rewarding yourself for taking the positive action. So we have a lot of great folks that are joining us on Instagram. If you're interested in following along our productivity workshop, the slides are bit.ly/productive with Joe. So let's maybe take this into a practical example. I really love running. Up until maybe December or November, if you had asked me that, I'd be like, running is okay, but it's not that interesting. So what did I do? I started following a lot of people on social media who are runners and running influencers. I needed that little kick of inspiration. I put my shoes and my running gear in a place that's extremely visible and nearby the front door or the door of my bedroom. I love running with friends, building community and making sure that I have others that support and give me positive feedback. A great example of that is using a platform like Strava. Strava is a great online community for runners to give each other feedback, thumbs up, and positive support. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this, but I love a good energy drink or maybe even a cup of coffee or tea before my run. It gives me that extra energy boost that I need. And sometimes scheduling it and doing it regularly. These are some of the other ways that help me to get back into my running game, where I get anywhere between 15 up to 25 miles per week, which is my ideal running schedule per week. So let's talk a little bit about some of the other mindsets and behaviors. Again, I'm going to throw a lot of information to you in today's presentation. Make sure that you download the slides at the end of the presentation and just implement one thing at a time. If you try to implement everything at once, you're going to feel overwhelmed. You're going to feel stressed out. There might be feelings of inadequacy or lack of self-worth or whatever it is. Just take the time, give yourself that self-compassion that you need, because progress is worth celebrating, whether it's small or large. So let's take it one step at a time. Start with small behavior changes. Again, don't do it all at once. Now, one of my favorite things that I like to tell to all of my clients is that if you can't measure it, it didn't happen. A lot of people feel really uncomfortable with that concept. So what do I mean by that? If you can measure it, it gives you all of the tools to see if you're making progress, if you're able to advocate for more resources from a higher up. Making sure that everything that you're doing is measurable is really, really critical. Two pretty popular tools to do that are called SMART goals and OKRs. Now, we're going to focus specifically on SMART goals for today's presentation, less so OKRs, but there is a distinction. In the chat, I would love to have everybody write down, give me a thumbs up or maybe a 1 if you know what SMART goals are, and a 2 if you do not know what SMART goals are. So feel free to throw that in the chat. 1 if you know what a SMART goal is. Great, thank you, Melody, Nicholas, Shrivats, Susanna, Mike. Okay, great, awesome. So a good amount of you know what a SMART goal is. SMART goal stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound or time-constrained. In last week's presentation on business development, I went a little bit deeper into what a SMART goal means. For the sake of today's presentation, I'll give you one quick example. A SMART goal, for example, could look something like this. We will generate $300,000 in annual recurring revenue from 10 new strategy consulting clients by the end of Q3 2020. Now, there's a lot of information. So let's try and break this down piece by piece. Hey there, we have one new attendee. I'm actually going to check to see if anybody's locked out. So, hey there, Tom. Welcome to the presentation. We're just getting started and digging into SMART goals. So let's go back to this and break it down. It's specific because we want to generate a very specific amount of additional revenue from 10 new strategy consulting clients. It's achievable based on my existing business and where I'm going. It's relevant because it's very applicable to my business, to my company, and it gives me a very good benchmark of where I'm going. And finally, it's time bound. I know that by the end of Q3 2020, I should be at $300,000 in new annual recurring revenue. The great thing about this is you can create intermediary benchmarks. For example, I want to be at 150K in ARR by the end of Q2. Now you could start to track your progress towards that big, hairy, audacious goal. Some people call that a BHAG. So let's move to the next one. Some other mindsets and considerations when you're starting to get into that productivity process, trying to reconfigure everything around you. Your environment is so critical. The physical space, it shouldn't be messy, it shouldn't be disorganized. I fundamentally think that the most productive people have a good balance between a little bit of messiness, but also trying to keep a sense of tidiness. And at least that works for me. But one thing that I firmly believe is you're the average of the 5 people closest to you. I have some incredible friends and some incredible family members, some of whom are in today's workshop with us. I'm really grateful for them. What's also really important is that I get a lot of inspiration from them every day. The work they do, the people they are, the values they hold, that slowly creeps into my everyday life. So I want you all to take a second to do a little bit of a mental inventory, or write down the 5 people you're closest with, or who you interact with the most. Do they feed your soul? Do they embody the positive behaviors you aspire to? I'll give you about 30 seconds or so. And take that time and think about this. Do you want to change that network? Change that community? Are there people that maybe you don't want to spend as much time with? Take a second to think about that. Okay, great. So now that you've taken a little bit of a mental inventory or wrote down that list of people that are actively around you in your community, maybe it's time to take a step back and think about who you want to spend more time with. These people will actively feed into that future version of yourself. So for all of my friends and family members that are a part of that small network of 5, thank you so much for positively influencing me to be a better version of myself. Another thing, you kind of want to be lazy. Now, what do I mean by that? Efficiency in execution and delegation and management are powerful skills that will allow you to focus on what matters. Again, The whole point of productivity is not to be busy, it's to focus and accomplish things that matter. If you're able to do things more efficiently, you'll end up doing things more productively. You'll also have more time to spend with your family, friends, and doing things that you enjoy in your spare time. So again, you don't necessarily want to be lazy in the traditional sense, but by finding ways to be more efficient, to delegate, and to work with others will allow you to scale and do your work much more productively. Again, I'll talk a little bit more about what that means in a bit. Another thing, what you put in is what you get out. Now, I'm talking a little bit more about yourself as a human being. Productivity is not all about work. Productivity is about making sure that your whole self is fulfilled, happy, spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally. So here are some things to consider. You should be exercising at least 30 minutes daily. Clinical studies have shown time and time again that active movement reduces the, for lack of a better word, plaque in the brain. It allows your brain to increase neuroplasticity and ultimately your intellectual capacity. So making sure that you're moving is incredibly, incredibly important. A thing that I like to do, and it's really helpful, to separate the emotional realm or my emotional responses and sometimes my ego from the actual practical or physical world, is using meditation. It's a great way to restart, to reset, and start your day. One thing I love to do is drink water religiously. I usually start at sometimes 2 liters, going up to 3, 4 liters per day. Drinking water is shown time and time again to increase your mental capacity. I actually have a great quote on that coming up in a little bit. Again, work is not about spending much more time. It's not about spending 60, 70 hours a week in front of your computer. So make sure you get time with your family and friends. Sleep well. Oftentimes, the entrepreneur is supposed to be sleeping 4 hours a night. We're not Elon Musk. Now, Elon Musk is a little bit of an edge case, but the most effective people are known to sleep at least 7 or 8 hours per night. So make sure you're getting your sleep because you will be much more effective. I guarantee you this. Some other things to consider. I like intermittent fasting. I usually do it during the week. Sometimes on the weekends. I notice that the more that I eat in the morning, the more sluggish that I feel in the morning. I like to use my mornings for my most critical, intensive, and intellectual work. That's usually better if I don't have too much side. A great tool to track your intermittent fasting is called Zero, which is an application on the iPhone. So feel free to check it out. All right. So we're going to jump into the Get Things Done framework. Earlier today, I sent everyone a link or an email with a link in it. We're going to be using dynalist.io to get started on the Get Things Done framework. So while we're transitioning into Get Things Done, please take a second to go dynalist.io and sign up for an account. It's free, it's easy, and painless, I promise. At a high level, the Get Things Done framework allows you to focus your entire energy and creativity on completing tasks in a stress-free manner. That sounds pretty ideal, right? Get Things Done advocates using a consistent routine. Again, consistency is really key. And trusted tools to help you keep track of things that you need to do and remember. It allows you to capture tasks. It allows you to clarify tasks. It allows you to organize tasks. It allows you to reflect on tasks. and then finally to engage and to accomplish those tasks. So we are going to have 7 different inboxes inside of our Dino list. Everyone should be able to see my screen in 1 second. So this is just a quick example of what my everyday get things done framework is. So now we're going to go to create a new main node 2. I'm going to wait till everybody gets on Dynalist. If you're already on Dynalist, please give me a 1. If you're not on Dynalist and need another second, please give me a 2. 1. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Luis. Awesome. Great. Perfect. Very cool. Awesome. So everyone is inside of Dynalist. Dynalist is a glorified note-taking application. The great thing about it is you can have unlimited nodes and unlimited nests. For example, Joe's node, information, more information, more information. But the cool thing about this is I can collapse all of these different nodes and categorize information with things like hashtags. Hello, project 1. I could even use @ to tag different types of people and further categorize my information. Again, this is extremely flexible, but allows you to store all of your information in one place. It could be notes about a book that you're reading. It could be to-do lists, calendars, etc. I use Dynalist for everything. And I'll actually show you something really cool in a little bit. So let's get started by setting up our 7 main folders: inbox, next, later, one day, archive, and read. So I just copy and pasted all this here, and I'll give you all 1 second to create your folders: inbox, focus, next, later, one day, archive, and read. Okay, so now let's kind of break down how we start to think about this. Inbox is pretty simple. The inbox is a space for you to quickly dump tasks, ideas, or thoughts that you might have to categorize for later in the day. I really believe that you should not be using mental clutter or mental space to remember things. Just dump everything in that inbox. For example, I might want to buy milk from the store. I might want to go for a run. I might want to send an email to Mike and Shrivesh. Now, here's a really important caveat. If you can accomplish in 2 minutes or less, do it now, okay? The reason why is because the switching costs and the time to actually write it down and to mentally switch to accomplish that task is going to end up costing you more time. So if there's something that you could do in 2 minutes or less, do it quickly, do it now, and just simply get it done. So now that I have this inbox, I like to use my focus list every single day to basically come up with a list of 3, 4, or maybe 5 core tasks that I want to accomplish, again, for the next day. This is really important. You want to set your to-do list the day before. The reason is simple. It helps you sleep better. Sometimes I go to sleep thinking about all of the different things that I have to do, and I get stressed out. Then what happens? I don't sleep well. then what happens? I'm not productive the next day. So try to get in the habit of setting your to-do list the night before. This will help get everything out of your brain on paper so you don't have to think about it. You can sleep well and get ready for the next day. I'm just going to put some items here. Now, these items are different tasks or activities. The thing is, they should be smart. They should be measurable. They don't have to be super extensive, like the example that I gave before, but something that is clear that you checked it off. Now, here's what I do. If you click the Command key and the Return key on Apple, it'll do a quick strike through, which means that I've accomplished that item. Now, when I accomplish an item, I have to move it somewhere else, right? What I like to do is this. In the archive, I'll have January, February, March, April, May, etc. So I'll have every single month. At the end of the day, when I'm cleaning up my to-do list and moving things around, I might move something into the focus, which is buy milk from the store. I've accomplished that. And now at the end of the day, I highlight these 3 items: buy milk from store, item 1, and item 2. But now, where do I put them? I will put them in the assigned month or category. So for example, what I would do here is now, all 3 of these items are in my archive folder from May. I could collapse this and I could do whatever I want with them. The great thing is, if I maybe want to remember when I did something, how I did something, I could simply go back to this month, expand this folder, and I'll see all of the items that I've accomplished in May. If you don't like all this kind of mental clutter, you could simply click on this little circle button. If you click on the circle, it goes specifically to this node, which is May 2020. So now I know I'm in the main node, the archive folder, the May subfolder, and I'll see all of the tasks that I've accomplished. One other quick thing. A lot of you guys might be familiar with the Pomodoro technique, and I'll be talking a little bit more about what the Pomodoro technique looks like. But the Pomodoro technique allows you to take all of these tasks and break them down in a measurable and meaningful way. Let's see. We talked about inbox. We talked about focus. We talked about next, later, and one day. I used next to do or to categorize things that I want to accomplish next week. The later items are 1 month plus items that I want to do. The 1 day items are, well, maybe 1 day. I don't know if there's quite a good definition around it. And then the archive, as I mentioned before, is a way for you to take all of those tasks from your inbox, from your focus that you've accomplished, and put them into a simple or organized place. Now the read. This is a really cool feature that comes with Dynalist. Dynalist has a plugin for Google Chrome. And the plugin is pretty simple. Let's go to newyorktimes.com. I'm actually blocked. And I'm blocked from New York Times because I have something known as the Serene extension. The Serene extension blocks me from Facebook and from all of the other sites to make sure that I'm being extremely productive. Something for you to consider. Let's go to google.com. Now, if I want to save google.com into my Dynalist, what I'll do is I'll click up here on the top right. You should be able to see this. It is a little bit of a paperclip icon. It's called the Dynalist extension. Very simple and very easy way to clip information from the internet and simply save it inside of your Dynalist. I click send, and it'll automatically be captured into my Dynalist list, which should be in the read column. So it looks something like this. I haven't connected it yet, but theoretically, that's where that information will go. Great. This is a high level of how the Get Things Done framework works. You basically move things from top down. Inbox, focus, maybe the next, maybe later, one day, and then hopefully into that archive when you accomplish something. Pretty straightforward. It's just a fancy way of organizing information. I highly encourage you to make use of hashtags. So for example, if you're working with many clients, many projects, etc., you can simply give them the correct hashtag. Another thing, you could also include dates. If you include the dates, then it'll pull up that information and remind you that something is due on that specific date. Pretty cool, huh? So let's review what we've talked about so far. We've talked about some of the mindsets that you might need in order to be more productive in your everyday life. We talked about productivity and what that actually means. It's not being busy. And then we talked about the Dynalist framework, going from inbox all the way to your archive and simply categorizing everything in a seamless and organized manner. Pretty good so far. We're only about 35 minutes in, and I feel like we've covered a lot. If you're interested in purchasing or downloading the book, I've included a quick link to Amazon for the Get Things Done framework. Oh, here's the quote that I mentioned before. Drink some water. 1 glass of water can increase focus by 14%. I'll take a quick sip right now. Also, if you have any questions or are confused about something, please feel free to throw your questions, comments, or thoughts into the chat box, and I'll address it as we're going along. I mentioned this before. I use a lot of tools and a lot of ways to scale my work and be much more effective. Just because I use a lot of tools doesn't mean that you need to. Do not feel overwhelmed. Do not feel frustrated. And most importantly, do not try to implement everything at once. Try something that you find interesting. Maybe something that's a little bit more relevant to you, and try it step by step. If after 15, 20, 25 days you really like it, maybe try something different. Piece by piece and step by step will help you to make this a sustainable transition to productivity. Take advantage of natural light. It tells your brain it's time to work. I try to wake up between 6:30 and 7 in the morning to get started. I might have a glass of water, a cup of tea. I always start, now this is kind of funny, I always start by making my bed. Now, why do I do that? There's a very familiar or interesting military technique that was pushed time and time again, that if you start your day by making your bed, it gives you a small feeling of accomplishment. That accomplishment builds momentum, so it allows you to be more productive and more productive and more productive. So when you wake up, I encourage you to have a glass of water by the side of your bed, drink that real quick, make your bed, and get started or whenever you feel like. Sometimes 6:30, 7 might be too early for some folks, but I find that I'm much more effective early in the morning and my brain is significantly sharper. I try to take advantage of that. So I want to take a little bit of a step back. Before we go too much into the tools, one thing to think about. Have you ever been to the gym? And have you ever seen someone on the treadmill? And they're sitting on the treadmill, maybe they're just walking really slowly, maybe they're just texting with all of their friends, and it doesn't really look like they're breaking a sweat. The thing is, productivity and being more productive takes work. it takes effort, and a little bit, it takes being uncomfortable. So again, this is not going to be easy. It might be frustrating, it might be difficult, but it will pay off. I promise you this. So as we start going through these tools, rather than thinking about them intellectually, try to think about how could you implement them in your everyday life in a real, meaningful way. The first one is called the Pomodoro technique. Pomodoro in Italian means tomato. Back in the day, teachers used to have a tomato that they would put, or an apple, I think it was an apple actually, that they would put on their desk. And the apple or the tomato, whatever it was, would rotate very slowly, usually in 25 or 30-minute increments. The reason was simple. Francesco Cedillo said in the late 1980s that he would use a technique that would time for 25 minutes and give something like 5-minute breaks. Found that your brain really can't do that much processing after 25 or 30 minutes. So if you see someone grinding 2 hours, 3 hours straight at 11 o'clock at night, they're probably not being effective or as effective as they could be. So this is a great way to get started on being short chunked, measurable, and giving me that sense of accomplishment that I need. I really love the Serene app. The Serene app does two things. And maybe I could show you really quickly what this looks like. There's so many awesome people here, by the way. Hey guys. So let's see, I'm gonna admit Manuel, and I'm going to show you my Serene app. So this is an example of what the Serene app looks like. It has all of the days of the week. Now, how does this fit with the Get Things Done framework and the Serene app? There's a lot of different tools here. Usually, I'll take the items from my focus list, and the night before, I will move them into my Serene app. The cool thing is this, productivity workshop. Let's add that as productivity workshop with awesome people. And that is my task right now. My next session is starting in 5 minutes, but maybe I just want to get started on it now. So I have 30 minutes to have this awesome productivity workshop with awesome people. They could play music for me, I could add time, I could cancel the session, I could pause it, etc. This is just a great way to digitize the Pomodoro technique. I really love this application. The other cool thing, it blocks me from Facebook, Instagram, or all of the other websites that really suck away my time. So let's end the session and go back to the presentation. All right. So now that we've learned about the Pomodoro technique, I want you all to give me a 1 or 2. 1 means this is something that you want to experiment with. 2, this is something that maybe doesn't quite work for you. So again, 1, you're interested in Serene and the Pomodoro technique. 2, if you're like, maybe it doesn't quite work for me. Cool, awesome. I'm glad that was helpful. Thanks for the feedback. All right, so we talked about productivity. We talked about the mindsets that you need to have. We talked about the Get Things Done framework. And we talked about the Pomodoro technique. Another thing, delegation is scary for a lot of people, but it doesn't have to be. If you delegate effectively and build trust with people that you can outsource to, it'll give you time to drink pina coladas on the beach in Hawaii, I promise you. But you need to basically invest your time and energy to build those relationships and understand what people can help you solve what tasks. Let's take a second to think about 2 or 3 things that you can outsource. Ideally, things that are repeated rather than one-off. I use Fiverr almost every day, sometimes twice a day. I use it for developing applications, for writing blog posts, writing content, etc. I know you're probably thinking this, but I actually made this presentation myself. I didn't pay anybody else to do it. So now I want you all to take 2 minutes to write down some ideas for things that maybe you could outsource. And if you're interested in sharing, please feel free to share it in the chat as well. What are some things you could outsource or delegate? For me, I like to do a lot of my social media automation and content creation. Fiverr, Upwork, and there's a lot of great platforms to really efficiently find high quality talent for a pretty reasonable price. So take some time to think about that. Okay. So now that you have taken the second to think about maybe three things that you could outsource, after the presentation, there's a discount link. Feel free to click that so you can find some great people for a discounted price. And also, I'll get a little bit of a referral kickback as well. So that would be super helpful. Another thing, Gmail shortcuts. I get sometimes 50, 100, 150 emails that require my time and energy every single day. So one thing that I try to do is make sure that I'm saving every single second possible. I use something called Gmail shortcuts. If you click the select or the gear in the upper right corner of Gmail and then select settings from the drop-down menu, you'll scroll down to the keyboard shortcuts section and select keyboard shortcuts on. When you press save, it'll give you an extensive tool set to more efficiently use your keyboard to navigate and complete tasks in Gmail without having to use your cursor and click on things. Some things that you could do, for example, creating a new message using C. You could scroll down an email list using J. You could scroll up a Gmail list using K. Another thing, if you can templatize your work as much as possible, such as standard replies to investment requests, maybe I don't have time, maybe I don't have that necessary investment focus, I'll just use a quick template that I copy and paste. Gmail has that functionality. So if you get a lot of emails, try and use templates where you can. Cool. We have about 5 to 10 minutes left. So I'm going to try and grind through this as much as possible. Again, feel free to throw your questions, thoughts, or comments in the chat as well. I love Zapier or Zapier. Zapier is, if you see the 3 letters in the middle, API. API is a programming interface for developers. It's a fancy way of saying it allows 2 applications to talk to each other. Zapier allows you to connect different tools. For example, WordPress and Facebook and Google Sheets, etc. It allows you to send information seamlessly and, importantly, automatically. I have to write tasks or reports for my consultants or my clients all the time. Instead of copying and pasting information, everything gets fed into my Airtable and automatically summarized. So all I have to do is download and send an email with a PDF report. It saves me hours and hours of time. It's definitely worth the investment, I promise you. So if you find yourself doing something that's mundane and repetitive, try and check out Zapier. It might help you to automate or take away a lot of that work that you're doing. All right. I am the #1 unofficial brand ambassador for Airtable. If you've ever used Airtable before, give me a 1. If you've ever, ooh, great question from Nicholas. How do you use virtual assistant? Any tips? Outsource it. Great questions. If you used Airtable before, give me 1. If you haven't, give me a 2. Awesome. Okay. So it seems like half and half. Airtable in developer lingo is known as a relational database with a pretty user interface. It allows you to relate information between one table to another. It also functions very much like a MySQL database. So developers use this as the backend for their applications, and people use this like Google Sheets or whatever. It's incredibly flexible, incredibly powerful. I use it for a lot of things. I use it for CRMs. If I work in sales or marketing, a CRM or customer relationship management platform. I use it for social media marketing or social media management. I use it for project management. I use it for tracking my SMART goals and my OKRs. I use it for tracking things like startup pitch decks, etc. The picture, the picture on the bottom right is an example or some of the different databases that I have in my Airtable. It's incredibly powerful, super sexy, and I love it. I never thought I would actually say that. All right, let's keep moving. Dicta note. Let's take a little bit of a step back. I'm not a great typist, as you've probably seen in the presentation today. I usually make mistakes, I'm slow. For some reason, the black and green screens and the old Apple computers from the mid-1990s didn't quite cut it for me. So I try to dictate as much of my text and my emails as possible. A great way to do that is using the Dicta Note Chrome extension that allows me to type my Gmail or emails extremely efficiently and effectively. It probably saves me about 50% of my time on typing. Sometimes it's a little uncomfortable when your roommates or your friends overhear everything that you're saying, but trust me, it's worth it. You'll save time and you'll get to hang out with them a little bit more. And some final tools. We're right at 5:55, which is perfect. Canva is a great tool for people to create social media images or blog post images, banner images, etc. They have great templates, so you're not focused on colors, typography, finding images, formatting, etc. This probably saves me about 25 to 40% of the time that I'm used or doing to creating images if I don't outsource it. And another thing, I always have to get data for some reason or another. Maybe because I'm writing a report, doing some research, or whatever. I use Data Miner and Phantom Buster, two tools that are based on Python, that have Python scripts in the backend that allow you to quickly scrape and extract information from websites. Now, it's a little bit tricky, but it's really helpful if you know HTML and CSS. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It's basically the language or the code that powers almost every single website in the world. If you know HTML and CSS, great. If you don't, spend a couple hours. Try and learn the basics of it, because this will help you extract information from lists, websites, LinkedIn, etc., much more efficiently and effectively. And a couple of final notes before we move on to the Q&A. Progress over perfection. Set realistic time limits on tasks and do your best work in that time frame. Be focused, be diligent. Use the Pomodoro technique, use Serene, but most importantly, give yourself the self-compassion that you need. We're not perfect, we're not robots, and we're not supposed to be working all the time. But when you are working, try and give yourself that space and the time to do your best work. And I hope that was a helpful, helpful framing for today's conversation. Some Other quick notes that I've actually struggled with, and a lot of my friends in today's presentation have as well, is saying no. I was just thinking about this earlier today. I've had a lot of emails recently where people ask me to do things, and usually I'll say yes because I feel bad or obligated to, or I'm just afraid of saying no. Something that I'm working on actively every single day. The difference between being or successful people and very successful people is that very successful people say no to almost everything. Warren Buffett, the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway. Some quick tips to help you say no more effectively. Be assertive but courteous. Something that, a quote or something that you could use is, I appreciate you're asking me for help, but I'm stretched too thin right now to devote the time to be of quality help to you. Sometimes I'll see people say, hey, I'm too busy right now, but I'll follow up with you if I have time. That's okay, but it creates this weird power dynamic, and it also leaves the door open to that person following up next week or the week after. If you're assertive and create that boundary for yourself, then it's a mutually respectful way of saying, hey, I just can't quite do this thing that you're expecting of me. I wish I could be helpful, but I have to prioritize myself first. It's really, really important. And if somebody does ask you to do something in work, say a manager or someone higher up, if they ask you to do something and it's stressing you out, you can counter with some other type of boundary setting. So for example, hey, can you do X, Y, Z for me? You can respond, I'm happy to do X, Y, and Z. However, I would need 3 weeks, not 1 week, not 2 weeks to do a good job. How would you like me to prioritize them? It's a great way to create that mutual respectful boundary of, hey, I need to get what I need. I'll make sure that you get what you need. Let's come to an agreement in the middle and make sure that we're both respecting this boundary and space where we feel happy and we can do this productive work. Again, it's really important for you to advocate for yourself, because when you advocate for yourself, you'll be more happy, more productive, and ultimately more efficient, and everybody else will respect you more as well. That's it for today's presentation. We're right at 6 o'clock. I want to go back to a couple of the questions. The first question that we have from Nicholas is, how do you effectively use a virtual assistant? Any tips? Now, I said before, I use Fiverr and Upwork for a lot of my tasks. Sometimes I'll use a virtual assistant. The key difference, a virtual assistant is usually accomplishing different types of tasks, whether responding to emails, categorizing task lists, writing copy, doing research, etc. It's really important that your virtual assistant is in a systematized process. So using Trello or Airtable to manage all of your tasks in one place. I like to do a daily check-in with a virtual assistant, usually at 8 or 9 o'clock, say for 15 minutes. It could be through chat if they don't have access to a phone, but I really like getting that FaceTime, creating that relationship, making them feeling celebrated and important. So again, process is super important with some type of tool, Airtable, Trello, etc. And then also a consistent time for a stand-up. A lot of tech companies do this. The stand-up is a 15-minute check-in where we do something called Rose, Bud, and Thorn. A Rose, Bud, Thorn framework is a quick way to get through what is going well, what is coming up or coming down the pipeline, and a thorn is something that you're struggling with. So it's a really nice way to say Rose, Bud, Thorn. All right, what's going well? What am I working on today? And how can you help me? Or what am I struggling with? So hopefully that's helpful. And the difference between inbox and focus. Hey, Liz. Great. So in the Get Things Done framework, The inbox is the place where you quickly dump information. For example, I was walking down the street and I was like, oh, I need to buy vitamins. I'll quickly dump that in my inbox. Oh, I want to call my mom. Quickly dump that in my inbox. It allows you to eliminate mental clutter and just put everything in one simple space. When I get back to my computer or my phone, I categorize it based on the priority. Maybe I'll move it from my inbox to one day. Maybe it's something I want to do tomorrow. So I move it to my focus box. But that inbox is just that quick, dirty place where you just dump everything and then categorize it later. There is a phone application. Great question from Michelle. There's an iOS application for Dynalist. I mostly use it on my computer. So there's a Mac OS application. There's a web application. There's an iPhone application. And there's an Apple tablet or iPad application as well. So I have them in all of the spaces. If I have one device that's closest to me, I just dump it into the inbox there. Great question. So Shabazz asked, do we use Airtable and Dynalist interchangeably? I use Airtable mostly when I'm collaborating with other people, and Dynalist more for myself. So if I'm working with a big team of 3, 4, 10 people to manage tasks, big OKRs or SMART goals, I'll usually use Airtable from that. And then if it's a task that's relevant to me, then I'll move that into my personal Dynalist and keep everything that's personal in there. Really important to consider and really important to remember. If you move something from Airtable to Dynalist and it's relevant to a specific project, try and use hashtags where you can. Great question, Susanna. So any bad habits to try and avoid in your daily routine? Social media is one of those things that I see sucking up a lot of people's time. Reddit, Instagram, Facebook, etc. I highly encourage you to use Serene or some other application that blocks or limits the amount of time that you're spending on these time-sucking sites. And it'll send you a quick reminder, hey, you probably shouldn't be doing this. That's one quick example. Another quick example might be, I would say probably social media is one of the bigger ones. So I can come up with some more later, but hopefully that's helpful. Why not use Google Suite versus Dynalist? Is it the UI? It's a great question. And this is the last question that I'll take, but Google Suite has a lot of different things, right? Google Suite has Gmail, it has Google Spreadsheets, it has Google Slides, and a whole list of tools. For me, Dynalist is great. And most effective for me because I like the idea of nesting information. So if you look at this right here, I have, let's see, notes from, so this is notes from a book that I read. So I have chapter 1, Dream the Possible Dream, and I have all of the information about the specific book. So Startup CEO notes. The cool thing is I can click and export this, or I could share this with specific people. I also took a course on angel investing. So all of this is nested in here. So section 1, what kind of angel, and section 2, deal flow. So I can quickly expand and zoom in on different types of information. I took a course on drop shipping because I was interested in it. Again, all of it is super nested and organized. So I have my Get Things Done framework in here. I have my book notes. It's all organized in one simple and easy to manage space. Hopefully that's helpful for you. If you like Google Suite, feel free. I personally like Dynalist, which is why I wanted to show you guys in today's presentation. Hopefully this was helpful. One quick ask before we finish up today. Social justice and racial justice is super important to me. And as the world is changing, we need leaders like all of us here to take the time and energy to donate and give back. So instead of charging for today's presentation, I simply ask that you do this. Go to socialjusticeplanner.com/public list and click on a link or simply Google one of these organizations. Give $10, $20, maybe ask if you could volunteer, and let me know which ones you donate to and why. It's really important to me, and I would really appreciate if you take the time to do this. So thank you all for joining today's presentation, and I'm incredibly accessible and we'll be giving more workshops over the next couple of weeks. The next one is next Thursday, an introduction to spreadsheets, more focused on Google Sheets, but a little bit of Airtable. Advanced spreadsheets, startup accelerator best practices, how to manage teams, and venture building crash courses. I hope you learned something helpful. My email is at the bottom, and thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate having you all here and excited to follow your productivity journey. Absolutely. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Susanna, Sharach. Awesome. Thanks, Luis. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Mike. Awesome. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Awesome. Thanks a lot, Nick. All right. Bye-bye.